Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I'm Aurora.
And I'm Kaya.
And this week we are discussing Series 8, Episode 7, Kill the Moon by Peter Harness. This one has a reputation for being really bad, and it's bad, and it's got some dumb shit, but I think really what isn't talked about that I think should be talked about more is the fact that this episode is also fucking boring.
I did not have the boring experience. Just to confess to the audience, we had a plural moment and forgot to watch the episode, so we watched it very quickly on 1.5 times speed, and it was a lot less boring that way. It was still bad, though.
It's like I went through the runtime, and I broke it down, and I realized that half the episode is boring spider shit, and half the episode is one scene that is 20 minutes long.
What scene?
It's the whole, like, the doctor, I'm pretty sure, goes like, yeah, all right, you guys gotta decide this on your own at like the 20-minute mark.
Oh, that whole thing. Is that just, they move around a bit. Is that just one scene?
Okay, maybe it's not just one scene. It just feels like one scene because it effectively becomes all about this one thing and feels like a very compressed microcosm.
And then there's the ending argument, which is like the only time the episode has any like proper tension that feels like somewhat with a pulse.
It's like everything about that argument works except for what it is they're arguing about.
Yeah. Hell, you put this argument at the end of the last episode and I buy it more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, so we start off, first off, Courtney's here. It barely like, why is Courtney here? Really, actually, genuinely, why is Courtney here? What does she add to this episode at all?
I think the point is supposed to be something about how the Doctor treats humans like children.
I did not get that. Gonna be one hundo with you, Chief.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That feels like a bit of a stretch there, Chief.
Here's where I feel weird and bad about this, because on one hand, I get the sense that this is a character. The Courtney character is like the actress, the young actress is clearly putting in work. So like on one hand, I feel like less bored watching her than like the two kids that Clara was like babysitting, basically.
The two dipshits from Nightmare in Silver,
yeah, that just like fucked off after that episode. Like it's better than that, but also at the same time, the kids at the Clara's kids had at least more reason for being there conceptually. So I was just like, okay, this is a better performance, but still, what the fuck?
It's like, also, like, the whole inciting incident, I mean, admittedly, this is me we're talking about here, and I don't know, okay, year 10, so like 16, okay. The fact that the inciting incident is the fact that she's like all emo and fucked up because the doctor said that she wasn't special. I don't know, man. I already knew I wasn't special when I was 16.
Yeah, that's very weird. that being
it's like, it's like on the one hand, like I don't want to make fun of something like that can legitimately mentally fuck someone up if kind of told in the wrong way and can hurt, but at the same time it feels kind of condescending.
Yeah. It's weird vibes, definitely from the get-go, because like, okay, I know it's about him treating humans like children, because like the things he says to her are supposed to parallel his attitudes and how he treats humans throughout the episode, which is what Clara talks about at the end. But yeah, it's weird because then it's like, I mean, I don't think she would actually have like a meltdown about being told she's not special,
Yeah.
especially from like a grumpy old man. Like, I don't know, just literally just from what we saw in her character the last episode, that's just not her vibes.
Yeah, and actually, honestly, here's my thought. Here's my thought about this, is that 16 feels a little bit too old for that. If it was like middle school, then like, yeah, sure, and maybe I'm splitting hairs, but it feels like most teenagers, except for like really spoiled ones, which this character doesn't really read like that was their intention, generally accept that.
But no, we need to take her to the future because she girl bosses her way across the pond to become president of the goddamn United States. So we have that to look forward to in the future, I guess.
Yeah. Yay.
Okay. So I want to give, I don't know if this is props because the episode ruins it, but like the setup, I actually like once we get to the future, the first bit of setup I actually like humanity sort of losing interest in space, the fact that they had to like get on like pretty old tech to even get to the moon.
Yeah.
We're kind of seeing that play out in real life, that I think like most space shit right now is private and corporate. So like I dig that. I dig the atmosphere. And then everything else happens.
Yeah. It's like for an episode, it's like it feels weird, like I mean, I guess it's not necessarily supposed to be a monster plot episode, but it's like just spiders, and like if they're not even interesting with the spiders, they're just spiders.
Also, fuck this.
Okay.
Fuck the bacteria spiders. Why do they have webs? What the fuck is that? Like I'm sorry. I know this is Doctor Who.
You see.
I know this is.
You see. It's a metaphor for how humanity is trapped by itself.
Okay.
Trapped you. I don't know. Can't.
Are you going through like a kinning a middle school English teacher phase right now? What's going on?
God.
I thought I'd give the worst possible explanation for it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just, I can accept a lot of soft science from Doctor Who. You kind of have to, but this felt like 1960s Trek era, like original series soft science, and that hasn't aged all that well. So seeing this, I was just like, well, yeah, I guess we're doing this shtick now.
Yeah. Yeah, and like and then actually it feels weird because like for an episode that feels so boring, there's so little going on. Like it just feels like there's nothing to talk about except the ending.
Fuck it. Let's go there.
Yeah.
It's the only thing of substance that even tries it. It's the only part that tries to have something to say, and then it like butchers it spectacularly.
Yeah. So first off, it raises the point that the Doctor's like, no, this is an important event in humanity. Humans should be the ones to decide it, not me. And admittedly, I don't know. Maybe being charitable, the point that the episode is making is that the way that he's going about it is kind of a really dickish way. But like, he's not wrong though. It would be kind of shitty for him to just make that decision for the rest of humanity. Yes, admittedly, he does similar shit all the fucking time, but I don't know. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that this time he finally like developed a conscience or whatever and was like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna actually do something a bit better. But it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't actually think that him dipping out and being like, nah, you guys got to figure that out for yourself is a bad thing.
It's internally
Yeah.
consistent within the story and the episode, but the fact that his whole main thing, the fact that he became a like Gallifreyan exile in the first place, was that he wanted to interfere. It's just it's stretching me a little bit, but it's not to the point where the story is broken for me. It's like, okay, let's see where you go with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um.
Yeah, I would say again, it's just kind of weird because you can tell they didn't put enough thought into like any of the implications of this episode.
Yeah.
Like, because sort of the way I read it is like he knew it wouldn't be a problem if it hatched, and he withheld that information, which then is a little worse.
That's kind of sus. That feels like bullshit testing
Yeah.
you like dumb shit.
It also, the fact that this writer has gone on record to be like, yeah, I didn't intend the abortion metaphor, is just like that astounded me with like the level of, I don't know, it feels like Chibnall era like levels of like political self unawareness. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, and we'll get into it later, but okay, the fact that like there's just so many like factors wrong with the choice here, right? That like, okay, we have a situation where where the moon is an egg, let's get over how stupid that is, but if it hatches, like, it could affect like millions of people. Like, should we put that up to a vote? Like, how should we decide this? And it's just like, already you've gone off the deep end if you're trying to make this like an abortion thing, because even most pro-life people, quote unquote, like anti-choice people, will say that if the mother's life is in danger, then yes, abortion is acceptable in that instance. And not only is that the case here, but it's one species basically versus one life form.
Yeah.
Like
that's also that's not actually abortion at that point, because that's a completely different species, and it's not it's something, but it's not really that.
Yeah, and then God, putting it up to a choice, and then you see at every instance they could do something like interesting, and then they just decide not to. So like Clara being like the control freak, basically, and deciding that like, no, she knows what she's going to do best, like she's going to be the doctor and override everybody's, personal choice. You could have commentary on how democracy is sometimes used to justify horrible things like slavery or oppression or whatever, or it could be a character commentary on Clara, but no, it's just this sort of like muddled, like, again, I bring it back like a phrase I used in the last episode. It's like that we used in the last episode. It feels like melodrama, except like you're trying to make a salient like political thematic point as well as having melodrama, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just like, all right. Yeah, actually, yeah. I think that's actually that's true, and I think that's something I didn't really think about because I basically just mentally checked out by the time that we got to that point. But yeah, actually, that's true. The fact that it becomes pretty clear that he was trying to have this be like a teaching moment feels like really bad.
Yeah. It
also,
just
what are you even teaching?
it puts a weird Yeah,
Yeah.
it also just puts like, yeah, okay, actually, yeah, that's a good point. Like, what is he trying to teach here? Like, randomly figure out the exact ethics of this situation under stress of potentially billions of lives. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's what? And it just puts
Yeah.
like a really weird strain on their relationship because like it just brings the tension between them in a whole different like, or because up until this point, you know, he's always been a bit of a dick, and she's always been like, "Oh, I was sure about that." Like she
High
doesn't like it.
strong.
But then it just like it takes it in this really weird extreme direction where she seems to like actively despise some things about him, and it's just like that's not what the dynamic was in any other episode. And as far as I recall, does it continue on that in the rest of this season at all?
It does somewhat continue on it in the next episode, but then things just kind of go back to normal. I mean, I really like that next episode, but things do just kind of go back to normal.
Yeah, so it's just weird and out of place.
It's thinking like about where Clara and the Doctor go as like a character dynamic going forward. It's weird that like the show doesn't start to explore her becoming more like the Doctor until after this episode, where the whole point is basically like, okay, you do my thing. Like that's weird that happens.
Yeah.
And like brain blast moment here. This is basically a worse written like what is it fucking called? The episode in series 5 with the space whale.
Beast Below?
Yeah, it's a worse written that because there's a moral dilemma and technically there's a cop out at the end of that one too, but at least it like thematically makes sense and and the Doctor isn't like pushing everything onto their companion, and granted that's like a very different situation. He'd like literally just met Amy, but it's like taking the bullet points of that and being like, okay, how can we do this again but worse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the egg, the baby laying another egg is the actual moment I was just like audibly I was like, what the fuck? Like have a moral consequence to your like huge thing that you spent like a 20-minute scene on, but no, we'll just do the thing again. We'll just replace it. We'll just go back to the status quo. Again, very early Star Trek. Don't change anything.
Yeah.
Just rewind to the beginning every time, and nothing matters, which again, if we're following the abortion metaphor, makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I don't feel like that was really I do kind of believe him when he says no, that wasn't my intent. It's just a bad metaphor. Not necessarily for maybe not a bad metaphor. It's just a bad argument, not specifically about that particular issue.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's a J.K. Rowling situation where you can clearly see, like, in hindsight, the problematic elements of her books being purposeful. I just think this was like a fucking goof. It's sad that, like, I don't know, comparing this episode to like Orphan 55, where there's actual consequences and the Earth is like fucked in that episode. It's just like the fact that they could do that and you were just like, no, let's have the moon. It's a new moon. It's a new baby. Like, what? I don't know. Maybe there's behind the scenes stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Is this a new writer?
Yeah, but it's the guy who does Zygons later.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, who knows? This, yeah, I don't know. Out of the very two soft science episodes, in this series, this and I think it's called The Forest, the one where like an entire forest grows overnight.
Yeah, that's a different guy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, it'll be interesting to see after like everything, which one I hate more. But right now this is just bad, man. It's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, at least it gave us the next episode, which, as I said, I think is really good. Because it very much rolls directly off of him getting the him and Clara falling out.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's all about I have to say about this if we're ready to move on to ratings.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
I don't have anything more specific.
All right. Episode's bad and boring as fuck. D.
Yeah, I think this episode rushed through every interesting idea it had and or fumbled it. It's politically, thematically, narratively incoherent at points. I wouldn't call this a bad performance by Capaldi, but it's also just kind of the one where like he's doing the least to help it, which makes sense. He's gone for like a lot of it. And yeah, this episode is one of the few that's made me actively dislike Clara as a character, which is fun. Rose still has you beat though, hun. Good work.
God, they've been talking about the fact that fucking RTD is planning, or at least we think RTD is planning on starting up kind of the Star Trek kind of model for Doctor Who, where it's like there's shows going on all the time. And I was kind of racking my brains on what they'd like, where they'd go for your spin-offs and stuff. And I was like, God, just not fucking Rose.
I mean,
please.
Here's the thing. I think Billie Piper's aged out of the type where you could make her like the doe-eyed sort of like quote unquote endearingly annoyable but like character.
But like parallel universe post Journey's End Rose.
You see, I don't think that was intentional. I get it. I wouldn't be jumping up and down if they announced it either. I'm just saying I wouldn't like dread the prospect.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I hope that that's not what ends up happening.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, this is, I don't know, pulling back from like our experience in like academic and like studying writing at the academic level and creative writing. It's like the core problem with this episode is that you take like a premise of like the Doctor having like a really big fallout with like a close companion and like what it would take to do that and the drama that would result of that and sort of separating them and bringing Clara sort of closer to Danny's side and less away from defending the Doctor. Like that's all like good shit. Like I understand as a writer, you want to like write that part first. You want to write the like the angst, the drama, the high emotions, and when it gets to the ending argument of the episode, I have no fucking notes because that's, you know, great shit. And Clara going to Danny and basically confirming that like, yeah, he pushed me too far this time. Great shit. Problem is, you have to do the work for that to mean anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, within the microcosm of this episode, and we'll see what we think about it next episode. Yeah, like there's a kernel of good in this, but like everything else, this episode it's not good.
Yeah.
Anyways, my rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so incoherent. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so incoherent. I don't know what it wants. Okay, no. Actually, no. I don't think it knows what it wants the audience to think. It's just like this episode is basically the epitome of throwing out a moral dilemma for the sake of it to feel deeper than it actually is, and just yeah, it has no idea what it's trying to say or what it's trying to yeah, no idea what it wants to be or what it's trying to convey. There's some good visual design stuff, and yeah, I like some of the surrounding context of like the space stuff. Um, I actually think the last conversation with the Clara and the Doctor is fine. Like I don't know, I like that. I, I think the conflict is fine. I just think it's weird that it never gets followed up on, and also that it's coming out of basically nowhere and is just tied to this shitty plot. Yeah, it's a pretty shitty plot. Fucking 5 out of 10.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, next time we will be discussing series 8 episode 8, Mummy on the Orient Express, which I'm very excited for. I think it's some good shit. Yeah, until then, you can support the podcast by backing us on Patreon. You can follow us on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. Supporting us on Patreon gets you a number of benefits, such as early access to episodes, the ability to listen in live to episodes being recorded, and potentially even the ability to guest star upon an episode of your choosing. I'm Geoff. You can follow me on Twitter at WheatleyDL.
I would be fascinated to read the Flat Earth forums discussing how a moon laid another moon, what they thought of that, and you can follow us at Of Mice and Femmes on the Twitter.com.
And we will see.
I'm thinking about the hot lady from Elden Ring. The end.
Understandable. So are a lot of people I know. And we will see you all next week.